Thanks for coming, everyone. We had called this press conference to give an update on a homicide investigation from October of 2018 that occurred here in Waterbury on Walnut Avenue. Joining me today is Captain Michael Ponzillo from the Criminal Investigation Bureau, Detective William Fox, and Detective John Nappiello. So back in October of 2018, October 11th, shortly after 3 a.m., two women were hit by gunfire here in Waterbury at 17 Walnut Avenue. One of those women, 30-year-old Francois Guzman, succumbed to a head wound that day. Another woman, Darlene Mazon, remains paralyzed from injuries sustained on that day. The Waterbury Police Department has been actively investigating this incident as well as other gun-related incidents in the city of Waterbury since that time. Almost a year prior to this homicide on Walnut Avenue, the Waterbury Police Department identified that there was an issue with violent crime rising in the city. At that point, we reinstituted the Gang Task Force due to that steady increase in violent crime. The Gang Task Force quickly identified localized gangs were operating within the city of Waterbury. And we identified two gangs, the 960 gang and the ATM gang, or Addicted to Money gang, as two that were prevalent and clearly involved in acts of violence engaged towards each other with firearms. Unfortunately, during these acts of violence with firearms, innocent individuals such as Francois Guzman and Darlene Mazon were stuck in the middle. Based on an ongoing investigation that was conducted by the Gang Task Force, Major Crimes, Street Crimes, under the Criminal Investigations Bureau, information was obtained that allowed the Gang Task Force officers to apply for and obtain arrest warrants for 9 individuals responsible for Francois Guzman's homicide and Darlene Mazon's assault. Those individuals are identified here today on the board. The first suspect who's in custody is Jermaine Gilbert. Gilbert is charged with conspiracy at murder and conspiracy at assault in the first degree. He is currently being held on $1.2 million bond on unrelated charges, other violent crimes that occurred here in the city. The second suspect is DeAndre Burris. DeAndre Burris is still wanted by the Waterbury Police Department. We currently hold arrest warrants for Burris that charge him with conspiracy at murder, conspiracy at assault in the first degree. His last known address was here in Waterbury, Connecticut. He is considered armed and dangerous. Another suspect involved in this incident was LaDerrick Jones. Jones was taken into custody late last week. He is charged with conspiracy at murder, conspiracy at assault first degree, currently held on $1 million bond. Another suspect involved in this incident is Gabriel Pulliam. Pulliam is a shooter, one of the shooters in this incident. Pulliam is currently incarcerated, held on $4 million bond for this and other unrelated charges of violence acts that occurred here in the city of Waterbury. In this particular case, in the Guzman case, he's charged with conspiracy at murder, conspiracy at assault first degree, and numerous firearms and weapons related charges. Another suspect involved in this, actually there's 3 juveniles. One has been transferred to the adult docket but still remains on the youthful offender docket. His new information cannot be released at this time, but as soon as it is available, it will be released. There are 2 other juveniles that are currently in custody. All 3 of those juveniles are charged with conspiracy at murder, conspiracy at assault in the first degree. Another party involved in this incident is identified as Daquan Sinistera. Sinistera is in custody, held on $760,000 worth of bond, charged with conspiracy at murder, conspiracy at assault in the first degree. And the final suspect in the Francois Guzman Darlene Mazon case is Julian Scott. He is the second shooter involved in this incident. He is currently held on $3 million bond for these charges, as well as unrelated charges for violent acts that occurred here in the city. In the Mazon Guzman case, he is charged with murder, conspiracy at murder, conspiracy to assault first, and a number of different weapons and firearms charges. As a police chief, it's important for me, for the community to know that the main priority of the Waterbury Police Department is to provide a safe community for all our citizens to live in, to work in, and to raise their families. We do this by proactive police work. We do this by having a combination of specialized units that work within the police department, task force officers that are assigned to other state and local and federal law enforcement agencies that work within the city limits of Waterbury, and our community relations programs. Our community outreach is very important to us here in Waterbury, and it will remain to be a main portion and a main part of how we will combat the violent crime here in the city. A highlight of some of the community outreach that we have conducted over the last 18 months since we saw this spike in violent crime here in the city are the following. Project Safe Neighborhoods. Project Safe Neighborhoods is a program that identifies violent drug and gun offenders that are being released back into the city of Waterbury. Myself, the State's Attorney's Office, the United States Attorney, and several nonprofit organizations that provide services in the city meet with these individuals upon their return to Waterbury. You know, we know it's difficult to come back into the city, and we want to support them and make them as viable and as productive as possible. So we offer them services in mental health and addiction, job placement, and education. But we also provide them a speech that includes information about if they return back to the life that brought them to the incarceration in the first place, that we make sure that we actively and vehemently prosecute those charges. We've met with over 250 individuals that have been released back into Waterbury since November of 2018 when we reinstituted this Project Safe Neighborhood program. Not all of them have listened to the message. Currently, 5 have repeat offended, and they are now on dockets in the federal court here in Connecticut being prosecuted by the United States Attorney for gun-related charges. There are 30 more cases that are charged with state gun and drug-related charges that are under review by the United States Attorney for consideration of adoption for federal prosecution. Youth mentoring is a big concern for us here in Waterbury. We know that there's a lot of youth out there that are exposed to a lot of violence, they're exposed to a lot of gang activity in our community, especially in the housing projects. We've made an effort to combat this not only through our PAL program, which services nearly 4,000 youth in our community each year, but we've instituted a youth mentoring program. By virtue of what we do every day, we mentor our youth, but now we do it on a one-on-one basis. We have officers teamed up with youth, utilizing information from the juvenile court and the juvenile probation systems to try to make good matches and create long-lasting, sustainable relationships between our police officers and our youth. We've also began outreach fairs in our housing projects in an effort to quell youth violence. We bring nonprofit agencies to provide opportunities for youth in education and job services and other family service with needs components to make sure that the youth and juveniles and kids in our city understand that there's somebody out there for them, and all they need to do is put a little bit of effort into them or ask for the help, and we'll make sure that it's provided for them and we'll stand by their side. It's important for our citizens and our business owners to understand that the police department will continually and actively and proactively investigate incidents of violent crime here in the city and make it a better place. During the course of the last 18 months, the Gang Task Force, along with other specialized units, has done this. A highlight of some of these investigations that have come to a conclusion, and some are still open and active, and we anticipate more arrests imminently on, date back to 2017 when this gang problem was identified in the city of Waterbury. It started back in May of 2017 with a shooting on Ives Street in the city. The victim was an ATM gang member, suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The perpetrator was a 960 gang member identified as Tajay Love, who is currently still incarcerated on this charge as well as other charges of violence that occurred here in the city. In October of that same year, a shooting occurred at Bank and Porter Street. Targeted were members of the ATM gang. The perpetrators, again, were 960 gang members, Tajay Love, Zaquan McDaniel, and Justin Cabrera. McDaniel and Love remain incarcerated on these charges as well as other charges of violence here in the city. Cabrera is currently released on a high bond. In November of 2017, a double homicide occurred on Wilkett Street. Those victims are identified as ATM gang members, gunned down by 960 gang members Shan Thompson, Zaquan McDaniel, Tajay Love, and Gabriel Pulliam. In 2018, shooting victims were identified in a Grand Street shooting as ATM gang members. It was a shootout between the ATM and the 960 gang. Thankfully, and God willing, no innocent victims were involved in this particular shooting. ATM gang member Derek Fogle and 960 gang member Yaquan Love are currently charged and incarcerated for this crime, and we do anticipate additional arrests in this particular incident soon. Search warrants were served at 1400 block of Thomaston Avenue in January of 2018, seizing 8 handguns, a long gun, and an assault rifle. These were weapons that were all utilized by the 960 gang in their violent acts in the city of Waterbury. In May of 2018, there was a shooting on Lakewood Road in an after-hours club. ATM gang member Terrell Thomas was identified as being responsible for this and charged with assault first and various weapons charges. Thomas is currently still incarcerated on this and many other violent crimes that occurred in the city of Waterbury. Again, in May of 2018, a search warrant was served on Springbrook Road. This was identified as an ATM gang residence. A numerous number of handguns, both semi-automatic and revolvers, were seized. Hundreds of rounds of ammunition were seized, and significant amounts of cocaine, heroin, and cash were also seized from that residence. In July of 2018, in multiple locations throughout the city of Waterbury, a joint investigation between the Gang Task Force here in Waterbury, the FBI office in New Haven, and the ATF office in Hartford conducted a wiretap investigation. 8 ATM gang members were targeted and identified throughout the course of this investigation and arrested. Search and seizure warrants were served at multiple locations throughout the city of Waterbury, and a number of guns and heroin was seized based on that investigation. In September of 2018, on Berkeley Avenue, a homicide occurred. The victim is Matt Diaz. This is a gang-related incident. This investigation is very active and ongoing, and we anticipate arrests on this investigation soon. Also in September of 2018, there was a homicide that occurred on Catherine Avenue here in Waterbury. 960 gang member Jesus Bryant was gunned down by a party identified as an Av-Boy gang member, Javion White. White is still incarcerated, awaiting trial on this case. In October of 18, in the 1000 block of Bank Street, ATM gang members were targeted. An unaffiliated female, who not unaffiliated with the gang, was shot and wounded with non-life-threatening wounds. 960 gang members were found to be responsible for this shooting. Julian Scott is currently incarcerated and charged with this shooting. More arrests are pending. In October of 2018, the Walnut Avenue Guzman murder, Maison assault occurred, which we've already discussed. And again in November of 18, in the 1000 block of Bank Street, an ATM gang member was targeted and became a victim of a shooting, along with an unaffiliated gang, a party unaffiliated with the gangs in that 1000 block of Bank Street. 4 960 gang members were identified as being involved in this particular shooting. 2 were charged to this point, Daquan Sinistera and Julian Scott. More arrests are pending. And so far this year, 379 Perkins Avenue, search and seizure warrants were executed for an ATM gang member, Tajon Keels. When the officers, 12 officers, made entry in that apartment, Keels threw a significant amount of heroin in the officer's face, causing injuries and decontamination to have to occur with these officers immediately so they wouldn't sustain any further injuries or overdose. Keels was charged with a number of narcotics charges as well as assault on an officer charges. Ammunition was also seized from that particular apartment. And lastly, just last week at 354 Long Hill Road and 200 Hill Street, search and seizure warrants were executed on 960 gang member homes. LaDerrick Jones was arrested at that point for the Guzman murder, and Demetrius Blandy was arrested for narcotics charges. So again, we're still investigating a lot of these incidents, and we do anticipate arrest warrants to be granted and more charges to come for some of the people that you saw here today that are listed on the board and some that are not. These senseless acts of violence will not be tolerated by the Waterbury Police Department. We will remain diligent and stand against any gang and violent activity that occurs in the city. I think a testament to that are the crime stats for the first half of the year here in Waterbury. If you take a look up on the board, closing out the month of May of 2019, we've seen significant reductions in the crime rate here in Waterbury, a 24% reduction in Part 1 crime, and a 43% reduction in violent crime occurring here in the city. We will continue our combination of proactive, specialized unit law enforcement and community outreach to make sure that these numbers continue to go down and we make this city safer than it's ever been before. Any questions?
Chief, would you mind kind of detailing a little bit about the homicide where I think was it Francois was killed, just kind of what happened there? Because initially I thought maybe all those people that were arrested were involved in that homicide, but it seems like that's not the case. Some people were arrested for some of the other incidents, right?
So the 9 people that were on the board were all arrested and charged in connection with the Francois Guzman homicide and the assault on Maison. But they were also arrested and charged for other acts of violence that occurred in the city throughout that 18-month time frame. So the Guzman homicide was the 960 gang that was targeting members of a rival gang known as the Av Boys. They believed they identified a member of the Av Boys on Walnut Avenue that night, opened fire, killing Guzman and wounding Maison.
Those 960 members shooting at included fellow Av Boys members.
Yes.
And then just for clarification, 2 of the guys that were arrested, I think the first person, the second to last, I think you said they were in custody for related charges and suspected for murder, or they've been charged with homicide as well?
So Daquan Sinistera?
Yes, exactly.
Daquan Sinistera is charged with conspiracy to commit murder and conspiracy to commit assault first degree.
Oh, and then Gilbert also is charged with conspiracy to commit murder?
So Gilbert, arrest warrants are pending for Gilbert for this particular murder, but he is being held on $1.2 million in bond for other violent acts that occurred in the city, non-related to this.
But it's fair to call him a suspect in this as well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That was what I was talking about. Chief, would it be fair to say, you show us kind of all those incidences, it might seem like it's hyperbole, but it's fair to say it's like a gang war between, especially, you mentioned the 960s and the ATMs. I mean, there's incident after incident.
Right. This was a targeted gang war between these 2 organizations. There's no doubt about it. A tremendous amount of work has been done on the law enforcement effort with our federal partners and our state partners to dismantle these 2 organizations. A number of the ATM gang members are currently incarcerated. The wire investigation that occurred last July was a significant blow to that particular organization. And the work that the gang task force has done here in Waterbury has put a tremendous blow into the 960 organization. Many of those members, as you see on the board today, are incarcerated, held on significantly high bonds.
Do you think it was a wake-up call for maybe some members of the general public, Francois Guzman homicide? Because I think there might be some thought in the public that, well, these gang members are killing each other, and while that's sad, it may not impact me directly. Have you noticed an increase in cooperation from members of the general public since that murder? You feel like the public is kind of maybe helping more than they were in the past because they're seeing some of these incidents kind of hit home?
You know, we take public safety very serious at the police department in Waterbury. I think the community in Waterbury takes public safety very serious. We have a lot of pride in our city, and people support the police department. They support the mayor's office very well here.
What's the next? Do you feel like, you have 9 guys arrested, including the 3 juveniles. Do you feel like this is a significant blow to these gangs, or do you feel like it's just sort of dropped in the bucket?
These are ongoing investigations. We feel that each and every day as we continue down this path that we're getting closer and closer to coming to a completion and taking care of this problem here.
Is part of that trying to send a message to people that are involved in these gangs that, which unfortunately have been arrested so far, that to try to do something else in your life?
If you have been involved in gang activity in Waterbury, or you are currently involved in gang activity in Waterbury, or you plan to get involved in gang activity in Waterbury, you will be arrested by this police department. And you will be prosecuted by the state's attorney's office and potentially the United States attorney's office to give you the fullest impact and the fullest sentence possible.
In each of those examples of those incidents that you gave off, were any of these 9 involved in any of those in any capacity?
Yes, each and every one of these, nearly each and every one of these individuals was involved in other unrelated incidents that we talked about today. This particular slideshow is going to be available, right, to be emailed out to the media, so you can take a look at it, and if there's any further questions about any connections, maybe slideshow itself can answer it for you, or you could certainly make an inquiry, and we'll try to straighten it out for you.
Could you just confirm the full name and age of Maison?
Yes, I can. Darlene Maison, date of birth is 11/13/1964. Yes?
Do you know what court they'll be arraigned at?
All these parties here will be arraigned at the Waterbury Superior Court at 400 Grant Street. They'll have to be habeased in. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to happen based on the court schedule.
You hope, looking back at this, not that you weren't already working hard on this issue, but that the Francois Guzman murder will sort of be a turning point and hopefully sending the tide on some of this gang violence?
Yeah, the Guzman murder is it's troubling to all of us in this room. We worked very hard to come to some resolution and give the family some peace, and as well as Darlene Maison. I mean, it's important. She suffers each and every day because of this senseless act of violence. You know, I think the turning point goes back a little earlier, back to December of 2017, when we saw a significant spike in violent crime, a significant amount of shootings, and some of our investigators, especially in the gang task force, started making connections that there was a lot of familiarities, a lot of weapons that were being used in the same shootings, and a lot of the same faces that were popping up in investigations.
Did the officer who had the heroin thrown in his face, is he doing all right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
The
that?
officer who had the heroin thrown in his face, is he doing all right?
All the officers recovered quite well from that. There were a few officers that were out for a very short period of time, but everyone's recovered well, thank you.
Anything you want to say to the public? Just because obviously some folks in Waterbury, not that they didn't know going into this, but you know, they're going to hear, hey, there's these gangs that are targeting each other, and there's been people caught in the crossfire. Is there anything you want to say to the 99.9% of people in Waterbury, obviously, that are doing the right things, but maybe in some cases have to deal with people like this?
Right, so I mean, there's a lot of messages. One is the police department's here for you. You know, if there's an issue or you have a concern, you can call us 24/7. We're available. You know, if you want to remain anonymous about information that you want to provide, that we're more than happy to facilitate that. But you know, as far as the gang activity that occurs here in Waterbury, we're on it, and we're going to remain on it. We're going to remain diligent. We're going to work with our federal partners. And most importantly, we're going to continue to be engaged in community outreach. So I would encourage all our citizens in our community to take advantage of some of the community outreach programs that the police department hosts. We host programs, community outreach programs in different parks in the city, pop-up community events. If there is an act of violence that occurs in a specific section of the city, we'll be there with a pop-up community event, and we encourage people to come out to those and meet your police department. Anything else? We're good? I really appreciate you all coming. Thank you very much.